teachers, friends and guests, welcoming one and all to this wonderful learning session. Today we have Mr. Venkatu Srinivasan, our alumnus from the batch 1984-86 and the group president, Asset Reconstruction and Structured Credit, Kotak Mahindra Bank. He's here to discuss with us on the topic Impact of COVID-19 on Indian economy, specialized thoughts on stressed asset management. Mr. Venkatu has a 33 years of experience in the financial space and currently heads the Asset Reconstruction Division at Kotak Mahindra Bank. He pioneered business of purchasing non-performing loans in India, and he has instrumental in establishing the Asset Reconstruction Division at the Kotak Bank. He has a rich 2 decades of experience at Kotak, and during this time, he has played many crucial roles in setting up several leading business like a commercial vehicle loan, tractor finance, several business loans, etc. And in this session, Mr. Venkatu will throw some light on understanding and resolving stressed accounts through restructuring, aggregating debts, bringing in strategic investors and a professional management to resolve the accounts, including investment banking, etc. Sir, I'm handing over the session to you, and happy learning, everyone.
Good evening, friends. It's like it is homecoming for me after so many years, getting back to alumni and sharing my thoughts. Basically, I just wanted to understand how this session. I can speak about my business, but how much it is relevant to the listeners and what they want to take out of it is what I would like to know. Whether we would like to have it like a question answer session, or you just want me to give an overview of the banking industry, the stressed asset problem, and then what we are trying to do, and how I look at the industry per se. You want that way, or whether you want to have some specifics? Since we have about 45 minutes to an hour, I just thought we should try to make the best use of it. So from the participants' point of view, how they want to be structured, it will be far more appropriate. I would like to do it that way.
Sir, if you can throw an overview of the current scenario, and post which for another 20 minutes we can have a question and answer session. Does that work, sir?
Okay, I'm fine with it. Okay. So I just wanted to share that just to give a brief backdrop. I'll not take too much of time of my journey, but I'll just touch upon the stress asset business, how we started. This is an industry I've been, to some extent, many of them say that I pioneered this industry in the sense that we went back about 20 years back to buy non-performing loans. And over a period of these last 2 decades, we've been trying to harness these bad loans and try to work out resolution as such. So I will just go back to the last 3 or 4 years, or I'll take from Raghuram Rajan's session from the banking industry, what happened, because that will be quite relevant to from where we have come in the last 4 or 5 years and where we stand right now in the light of COVID. Post this 2008-9, after Lehman crisis, there was a urge, there was a surge, or there was an urge that India wanted to leapfrog into the international arena, and we wanted to be compared with China. And then we said we as bankers were looking at the numbers per se. We found that the banking industry, India is nowhere figuring anywhere in the global map, largely because our gross advances and loans are very minuscule compared to any of even the small banks in the world. And Chinese bank was already dominating. So one of the things which the banking system, as well as the regulator, and 2, the government itself wanted to focus largely on the infrastructure. And they said that when we started lending, I'm talking about post Lehman 2009-10. So the fundamental thing in banking system is 2 things. 2 or 3 things are critical for banking. One is that liability and asset. When you look at liabilities for us, when you look at banking system liability, we raise deposits from from depositors, from other sources, which will be institution or even from Reserve Bank and other sources, and we lend. But the infrastructure loans, if you really look at it, were of 2 types. Infrastructure loans were always, the gestation period of all infra loans were basically between 20 to 25 years loan, whereas my liability profile is generally about 3 to 5 years, not exceeding 7 years. So to begin with per se, we had a liability and asset mismatch. We borrowed 5-year loan and lent for 25-year asset. So the thinking on the banking side at that point of time was that it's okay, but at some point of time we will put the asset on road and somebody else will take it over. It's like your relay race happening. Somebody will take the baton and run. So from that stage, we will take in 5 to 7 years, we will exit and somebody will take over. So initially, that was the thinking behind when we started this asset liability mismatch. It is not that the bankers didn't know that there's going to be an asset liability mismatch, but the thinking was that we will exit in 7 to 8 years time because the asset will start generating. And once the risk of that asset performing comes into play, there'll be many takers. Long-term institutional investors will come in, or some strategic investors will come in. At that point of time, the bank will exit. So this was one of the principles of the bank thinking of asset liability mismatch. I'll just touch upon it how we went wrong over there. That was one. Number two is that when we went into infrastructure or those kind of assets, the competencies to evaluate these projects was completely missing in the banking side. We were not experts at all. And all that we knew was that whatever projection, some project reports were given, and based on that DSCR, which has been generated on Excel sheet, we took many times we were forced to take decisions. So we lacked competency, we had asset liability mismatch, and we went into massive lending. This coupled with unscrupulous borrowers, which also took advantage of all these inadequacies in the system, it started ballooning. Then what bankers decided was, okay, we have got into this mess. Now we have to see how we have to come out of the mess. So the next round of problem solving, if I have to use that word as problem solving, banks started looking at most of the, you have to also understand, listeners, that one of the things is that 70% of the banking system loan, even today it should be around 65%, but large part of it is from the public sector banks. 70 to 75% of the total loans and advances in the banking system is from the PSU banks, balances from the private sector. Today it has marginally come down. It could be around 65 to 67% would be PSUs and balance would be. So 65 to 70 or 70 to 75% of the banks CEOs who are coming into the helm of affairs were all, if you look at, except for State Bank of India, all of them were having life of at the top is only for 12 to 18 months. Max was at 18 months. State Bank was the only bank which gave about 3 years a time at the top. Otherwise, all the CEOs who came over there were living the life of 12 to 18. So for them at that point of time, if I am at the head of the company for 12 months, my vision for the institution is only for 12 months. So all that I had to look at it from the institutional point of view is that, okay, let me see in my term, something should not go wrong. How should I keep my asset liability? How should I show profit? I cannot. So a lot of, for the lack of appropriate word, a lot of evergreening of accounts started taking place. You give the borrower the additional loan and take that money as interest and show it as a performing loan. So this Jamela was going on for 2-3 years. We called this various terminologies they used. I don't want to get into too technical details, but they used a lot of terminologies. We called as debt restructuring, strategic restructuring, a lot of CDR, a lot of forum was created just to ensure that evergreening to happen in the books of account, to show that everything is hunky-dory, it's not as bad, and things will come back. And that is point number one. So we were not reporting the true statement of accounts has not been reported. We were having problems in the system, and coupled with unscrupulous borrowers trying to take advantage of the situation. And fourth very important point, which we also need to understand, is that infrastructure in India is not an easy business to do. I mean, you have to get so many regulatory approvals has to be done. And even a genuine guy who wants to really kickstart an infrastructure business project is almost next to impossible. Even today, why India is not flourishing on the manufacturing scale, we can touch upon it if we have time, is largely because ease of doing business is not possible. So none of these projects were really taking off, and we were cooking our books of accounts. So then came a point of time in 2014-15, Raghuram Rajan as the RBI governor comes in. He gets into the motion, thick of action. He said this story cannot continue, and he realized this is all the bankers are doing all this jamela, so we have to stop this. So then these, we called a lot of terminologies again we used to rewind the entire banking balance sheets and other things. Then slowly the NPS started coming out. Actually, when we first started, I would reckon around 2015-16, we were thinking our NPS system in the banking would be around 2 lakh crores. I think the total advances about 100 lakh crores. We were thinking it will be about 2 lakh crores. Then somebody said it is 3 lakh crores. Slowly, one by one, finally we came to a point in 2018-19 when everything became bare. It touched about 15 lakh crores, 14 to 15 lakh crores. From if you do look at in any prudent lending, you have to look at, as you're talking about asset liability, what is the gross spread which a bank makes in funding? I borrow from depositors and lend to my asset creators. The spread which a normal bank makes, I'm not talking about the retail will be slightly higher, but corporate, not more than 200 basis points. That is 2%. I make a spread of 2% gross. That is gross. After all my expenses, other things, it will further come down. So 2 is also on the higher side, but I'm just saying 2, you take it. So when I'm making a 2% spread and I have a 15% loss, I mean, which business is viable? So in all humility, I have to say the entire banking system is bankrupt. If you take that, or banks are all bankrupt. So the only way was the banks, the government has to fund these institutions, which is in a very graded form. It started coming in. So this last 5 years, this story has been going on, and now it is again further coupled with a lot of, once when you start opening up this, it's like a surgery which started happening, a lot of pus coming out, there's a blood oozing out, and then you have to do the bandage and all the surgery was going on, and then a lot of people throwing mud at each other. There's a government intervention which has happened, this happened, this. So the CBI and all the regulatory bodies have also taken charge of. So this has led to a kind of a paralytic state where banks in the last 2 years were literally scared of lending. If I have to use the word, I use the word scared. People were literally scared to lend because you don't know, one, you don't know whether you'll get your money back. 2 is that assuming you will do all your thing right, if something goes wrong and your pension and other retirement plans gets affected by all your CBA and other things. So banks came to a virtual grinding halt, though they keep talking about 10% growth, 15% growth on advances. Large part of it is only internal circulation, and some part of it would have happened because of the retail money going up. In fact, we used to have savings of India savings used to be about 30%, now it's about 17%. So a lot of retail borrowers started coming in. So some banks went into the retail side. But if you look at the corporate and other things, virtually there is no lending worthwhile was happening even before this COVID. So now coming back to the situation, this is the story of the last 4 or 5 years. Banking system is in a state of crisis. We are only trying to manage situations to ensure that whatever we can try and salvage, we'll try and salvage, and then we will kickstart the economy we were looking at. And banks were not capitalized enough. And then the consolidation of public sector banks started happening up. First, SBI did it with all its affiliates, and then came in the next round, came in with other PSU banks. In between, there are 2 other major catastrophe which turned up with IL&FS, which in the private sector, which happened, and then followed by Yes Bank, and then a lot of cooperative other banks problem came in. So one problem after the other, because there was a can of worm which was waiting to burst, which started happening. And finally, this has been going on. And now, I don't know whether to use this word, last straw on the camel's back or death knell, this COVID has come in. Now from here on, how the banking system has to revive. 1, banking system has to revive. 2, the banking system has to kickstart the economy. So we have 2 systems. One is a patient who has to become all right, and then he has to ensure that he takes people in his fold. So my even this morning RBI governor's thing is that unless Reserve Bank comes and gives a guarantee for lending for small or some sector, I don't think the banking system is geared to lend big. So each one is now trying to protect the balance sheet. They're just trying to see that things are in order. And if you're wanting to kickstart, you want to protect and get back the economy back to shape, I don't think banking system, at least the Indian banking system, is in a position to really leapfrog and make that 30% growth or 20% growth to happen. I see it as a very challenging scenario, which I think is very unlikely in the current state, is my reading of the economy as such. So from my perspective, I don't think banks are well positioned today to really protect the COVID-19 and also to do that. But that doesn't mean that nothing will happen. But there are solutions which is possible, which whether the government will really look at it, I'm not sure about it. But this is what the Western world did in 2008-9. This is where the government has to step in, and or RBI itself, the central bank itself, has to step in and has to kickstart. It is not the banks which has to kickstart. The central bank has to kickstart to say that we will give guarantees. If guarantees come from government or from a central bank to say that we guarantee these loans, at least the first 20% loss or 30% loss we will undertake, then you lend, then it is somebody is there to back me up if there is a loss. So that gives a certain amount of cushion for banks to take a risk. So banks to take risk today, we don't have the ability unless we get some kind of a stability from the government. So this is what this is my reading of the situation, that if banking system has to really kickstart the economy and also protect most of these institutions which are in a very COVID state, how they're going to get back. I feel that a lot of things have to change, and hope that would happen. So I would also add one or two before we throw open. Two things I see that is that there are in a pandemic situation or once in a lifetime crisis, there is always opportunities. So, but there are three states of situations in any in any state of a company. So we used to study in Kotler's. Ramki sir is there. He used to teach us all Kotler's model. So we used to look at what stage the companies are in. I mean, if a company is in a state is very robust and it is in a state where its financials are in a good state, in a matured state, and the industry is in a good state of thing, then those companies will have opportunities. The companies which are just struggling to survive, you will have serious problem. Those companies have to look at how to shore up the liquidity. I think the most important point today is there are, whether it is individuals or whether it is corporates, two things are very important. Whether it is profitability or your balance sheet, or it is liquidity versus asset creation. So from if it is a corporate, in my view, whether it is a bank or company, don't look at profitability at this point of time. I think profitability is the last thing you should really look at it. Two things which you need to really look at it is that strengthen your balance sheet and strengthen your liquidity. These are the lifelines which will keep you in good stead for the next 12 to 18 months. So profitability should be in the back burner at this point of time. Only focus on how to create liquidity and how to create your balance sheet strong. So if your balance sheet has to be strong, the most important thing which you need to really look at is your loans. If you have a very high leverage, normally what happens is a situation is that the financial schools will all teach us debt equity ratio of not more than 2:1. I would suggest that don't even go for 2:1. Please look at whether you can be less than 0.5. So you don't have, if you don't have that kind of, if you have such a high debt stack, please try and unwind, because one, getting money will be difficult, and two is that leverage is what will kill these, at least the startup companies and the companies which are in a growth stage. For them to really take off, it is important that they have liquidity. So don't focus on profitability, focus on liquidity. That is number one. And focus on balance sheet and not on, again, on profitability, because if your debt is very high, bring the debt down. So these are the two important things I would like to say. If as an individual retail customers, or we as professionals, when you're looking at our investments, what we have to really look at, again, I would put the same emphasis on, again, look at liquidity is very important. Next 12 to 18 months liquidity, please have it in place, because bank situations and things like that will be very difficult. And if you're looking at buying some real estate or anything as such, I would only request, please defer it by another 6 months to 12 months. A lot of mouth-watering opportunities will come. In my view, commercial real estate will crash by 20 to 30%. This is my reading. Please don't take it seriously, but this is my reading, because with all the technology which is coming, with all the Zoom we are doing, and I don't think companies require so much of office space going from here on. I think 1/3 of my workforce today can work from different locations, not in such Bandra offices. So all this commercial real estate is going to crash. At least 20 to 30% will definitely happen. In terms of residential real estate, again, if you really look at it, a lot of opportunities will again come. In my view, at least 15 to 20% drop in prices will definitely happen over there. Industrial estate may drop by even 40 to 50%. So there is a bomb waiting as far as the real estate prices coming down. So any investors looking at that point of view, just keep that in caution, keep that in mind. So these are the broad spectrum I would like to look at it. And any specific questions from here on we want to have, we can take it. I think I've taken 15 minutes.
Yes, sir. Anyone who likes to have the question? Venkatapati, sir.
If you allow me, I will.
Yes, sir.
Not a question, maybe one kind of concern sharing. So,
Sure, sir.
Dr. Venkato, shall I?
Yes, sir.
Shall I? Just one
Yes,
clarification.
sure.
No, we have been, you said the two folds, they have to come into life and they have to work and come out. True. But banks by themselves are good. But people in some of the banks are bad. And that is the reason most of the things are happening. Is it any way out that we can have a streamlined effect of the only way of doing things?
Pardon?
No, okay. You said the banks have to come out. They have to come revitalized. Number one. Number two, they have to see to it that they have to grow.
Yeah.
Now, most of the banks, they have their own problems. That is, their own staff are doing most of the problems, mostly in the nationalized banks or even otherwise. So when the banks have the inherent problem within themselves, is there any way out that we could make a kind of an auditing? We can a kind of maybe a watchdog who could just say it is not possible, it should not happen.
So I'll just, it's a good point you raised, sir. I would like to touch upon this. This is a very important point what you've raised. So I started when I said that as bankers, we lack the ability to evaluate projects. That was one of the starting points of our mistakes we committed in terms of projects. So that was one. Then came other external issues which also compounded the problem. Now what has happened is that post Raghuram Rajan's thing, the regulator has kept a very tight vigil. Many of the issues which have come up in the last 2-3 years is also because of the regulatory oversight has been stepped up in the last 3-4 years. Very significantly, it has been stepped up in the last 3-4 years. In fact, earlier, many of the borrowers could really take advantage of the lack of sharing of information among the bankers. There was no data which was available at a common space. So regulatory oversight has become extremely strong. The auditors have come under a tremendous amount of pressure to closely monitor this. So some of this, there are landmark changes which have happened in the banking system. Also, we need to understand last 2-3 years, the Basel norms have come into place in terms of capital requirement, which is required, the oversight which is required. Reserve Bank has also put a lot of oversight in place. So I think they have made significant progress in terms of at least frauds not happening, or to be mitigate, not happening is the wrong word, maybe to mitigate the number of frauds which can happen, that to a large extent has started happening. Two is that in terms of credit evaluation process also, they have made a lot of progress in terms of the competencies, the what you say, in terms of hierarchy, who has to decide who's the risk head of the bank, what is the credit evaluation matrix, how the compensation system for the credit people should be done. A lot of things have been done in the last 3-4 years. I would say that we have made good progress over there. I will not say we are in a scale of 1 to 10. I will say we were somewhere around 5 to 6. I think most of them, or many of them, we have really taken care of. But the problem we face today is that first I have to clean up my mess which is there in my balance sheet. My balance sheet cleaning up is the most important point at this point of time. Now the question is that if I clean up my balance sheet, what is left is only holes. I don't have, so we need to have capital to be pumped in. So capital pumping in an environment like this, it's very difficult for banks to get in. Only way they can do, at least in the public sector space, is through government coming in and pumping in the money. The government itself has its own set of challenges in financial resources. So that is where we are stuck. So for coming back to say that employees there, so those things, I think a lot of process changes happened. Even on the lending side, a lot of analytics have taken place, robo metrics to be done, evaluation process to be done, hindsighting to be done, all that they have done. I think we are slowly but surely we are moving towards the global standard. Maybe in 2-3 years from now, we will be there. But unless I finish what is there and I start fresh, I can have all the good processes, but I don't have the capital to lend. I mean, how will I kickstart? That is where the problem is. Process we have changed. Process entire banking system. I will say that in the last 20-25 years, I've seen we have made significant progress. More so in the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of regulatory oversight has come in. I mean, there is a lot of audit committee which has come in. There is a bank accountability has come in. Staff accountability has come in. I mean, there is to the extent I will say that we have taken the pendulum from one extreme to another, to the point that you can't afford to make a mistake. I mean, today, whether it is a genuine mistake or whether it is a slipshod mistake, is also difficult to do that. But there is an accountability for the mistake has come in. To that extent, process has been streamlined, and I am not too worried on that front. I think that we have made progress. But what we are suffering or what we are lacking is in terms of capital, and what we also lack is in terms of leadership. I think the leadership is something which is absolutely lacking, at least in most of the thing, primarily because of, as I told you, when a leader is there only for 1 year, you were there in BSMAD for 10-15 years. You had a vision for 5 years, 10 years. You laid a plan and you did it. So if you have somebody there for 6 months and 1 year, so it's very difficult for somebody to have a vision for an institution. So that is also something has to be looked at it. And also the competency and all that has to come in. But my thing is that first we have to fix the capital. I think that is where we are suffering at this point of time.
Am I allowed to raise one supplementary question?
You can, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. This mutual funds are making a lot of noise. No, if you are interested, we could go ahead. Otherwise, we'll talk later. Mutual funds are making a lot of noise.
No, it is all integrated, sir.
Sometimes, Then see, the recent past, something has happened. Then they say debt fund and growth fund. And the debt fund, some regular dividends are being paid, and the growth fund, it is accumulated. The policies of the government keeps on changing. Once in a while, they say that the dividends are exempted all through. And last year they have introduced, this year they have introduced that any dividend that you gain is taxed at 10%, then further is added in your account. So, should we not have a consistent policy on this so that the investors could make some kind of better decisions, whether to continue on this kind of a debt fund or growth fund or equity related fund, and whether the dividend is being either maybe exempted or a portion can be collected by the mutual fund asset management company itself. Now, what do you think on this? No, this is very vague question, but still you can think of.
No. I'll tell you, sir. This is also a very important question you have raised. This is another mistake. I would suggest that the regulator problem was in a banking system. If you really look at, with all our mistakes, we also have a credit. There is a credit culture in a bank. When a proposal comes, whether it is a corporate or whether it is a retail, there is a credit which has been an institution which has been set up for the last so many years. So banks have made mistakes, but nevertheless, there is a lot of wisdom and knowledge when a credit evaluation is taking place. But in a mutual fund, what happened, say investors like you and me, we have two options. Either I can go to a debt fund or I can go to an equity fund. Equity fund has its own set of risk and reward. It's different, no problem. In debt fund, what the mutual fund operators were doing was that their investment into the company was based on only one parameter, based on the rating agency giving the rating. That's all. So the rating agency, again, what happens is that has its own set of business or challenges, and they went. For example, I'll give you this example of IL&FS was a AAA bond. Just not long time back, just 1 month before it became bankrupt, it was a AAA bond. In 30 days time, how can an institution from AAA can come to a junk bond status D? It is a question of a big mishap which has happened at the credit rating side. So when the debt funds were allowed to raise money and debt funds were allowed to invest in bonds of these corporates, and they went on only one parameter, which is again the rating agencies giving the bond rating. And this is again costed. So at least you have put the money in deposit, you would have got your 6% or 7% or 5% you would have got. Now if you have put, it is a basket, so you're not seeing the full story. In fact, today it is about, I think if my numbers are right, about 20 lakh crores are in debt funds, which investors have put in companies. Actually, without you realizing that, you might as well, you would have put in equity. Okay, nine companies fail, one company makes money, you may still cover. In debt funds, it doesn't happen like that. Your best case scenario is 8%, your worst case scenario can be even 0. And many of these companies like your IL&FS and all, people have lost a huge amount of money, and many of them are now happening. As we are speaking, a lot of redemption is happening in debt funds, and a lot of investors are losing money. So the question is that there's a lot of regulation which is required now in the debt side as well. So what happened was, one of the way government thought is that I am not able to give capital to the banks. So they allowed mutual funds to raise money and invest in the bond. This is an indirect way of giving capital to companies to borrow, give money for the companies to borrow. But actually that has also backfired. This is number is roughly about 20 lakh crores. A lot of them, not all of them, but some of them are in deep waters. So your question is right in terms of mutual funds on debt funds, how you have, there has to be a lot of another regulation which has to come in, which has to be over and above what the rating agencies to be done, or rating agencies themselves have to be, a lot of accountability has to be brought in among the rating agencies as well. So this thing government did in the last 3, 4, 5 years on the debt side to ensure that this is another way of giving liquidity for the companies to borrow money, because banks by themselves, either they don't have capital to lend or they are not willing to lend. So this came in, this is again got into a misfire. So the question is right, that will take some time.
Thank you very much.
If I
Thanks.
go back to your
time.
business
Thank
of stress asset management, if I understand your business right, this must be a good time for you because a lot of stressed assets must be coming on the block.
Yes, sir.
Am I right?
You're 100% right, but you complete the question, I'll tell you what are the challenges in my business.
Yeah, okay. I mean, first of all, I want to know, and so this has become an opportunity for you rather than a, yeah, now I'll listen to the challenges.
Yeah. No, sir, I'll tell you, one man's poison is another man's meat, they say. Okay. So the issue is that for stressed players, it's a game. But the fact also remains is that you also have to remember that 65 to 70%, as I told you, is in the public sector space. So public sector banks are the ones who are saddled with a lot of NPAs, and they are the ones who have to sell. Now, for the problem with the public sector banks is that if he sells today, let's say I lent a loan of 100 rupees. Now, even assuming I have made provisions, enough provisions, and in my book the asset stands at 0 or even very nominal value, say 1. If I sell it to somebody like stressed asset investors like me at 10 rupees, I still, on accounting basis, I still book a profit of 9 rupees because my book value is 1, 10 is the sale price. I booked it at 10, I make a profit of 9 in the book. In normal circumstances, it makes a lot of commercial sense for somebody to do that. But in reality, what happens is that when they sell it to me at 10, I'm not buying for charity. When I buy it at 10, I would like to make my share of my profit. Sometimes what happens, 10, I will make 20, 10, I can end up with 5. It's a basket game I play. When I buy 10 assets, when I buy 15 assets, there'll be some 2 or 3 which will make a lot of, or 10, 50, 60% will make good amount of money. Some 10, 20 will not make that amount of money. But what regulators look at it, or what the CVC and CBI guidelines is that, say this Venkata Srinivasan came and bought this asset at 10 rupees, he made 10, 20 rupees in that asset. So he's made 100% profit on an asset. That means you have sold it short. This is how the premises starts. So the guy sitting in a State Bank of India or any other bank, he will say, boss, I mean, he will come under a radar. You went and sold it to him at 10 rupees, and that fellow went and made a profit of another 10, which is 100%. At the same time, I would have bought another asset at 10 rupees, and I would have lost money, and I would have got only 4 or 5. I would have lost 5 rupees over that. That will not be highlighted. The asset where I made money gets a public attention. And then the CBI, CVC, everybody comes and haunts that guy who sold that asset. And then he feels that why the hell I have to take this risk of selling it to somebody and coming under scanner. Either I had some kind of unholy alliances with that party and thing. So nobody wants to sell. So that is why they go and sell these assets. What they do is that they go to the process called IBC came in, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court. They pushed all the company, good, bad, ugly, everything. They pushed the company into IBC. IBC is a platform. It's like a quasi-judicial body. They sell that asset, an asset which I could revive the company. Seldom it happens. It goes into liquidation and everything gets destroyed, but nobody is bothered. So there is a lack of what do I say? One is the regulatory oversight has become too much that somebody at a professional level will never like to take that risk. So coming back to your question, opportunities are huge, but in terms of somebody to sell that is a challenge.
Okay, so you're saying there is a supply side situation problem also, because there are not enough people who are selling to people like you the stress assets. But at the same time, there is also, even if you buy it, are there enough people to buy the stressed assets from you? At even that must be a challenge now, at least at this point in time.
No, sir. When I buy the asset, I don't go. I'm not a trader in that asset. I buy and I sell it. What we normally do is that when I buy an asset, I try to harness this asset and try to enhance the value and sell. There are different strategies, but I'll just touch upon only one strategy. When I buy an asset, let us say it's a running company. It is operating, let us say, at 10 to 15% capacity utilization. So I buy it at that price. Now, if I sell the company which is working at 10 to 15%, I will get the same money, or I may get even less than that. It doesn't add any value for somebody to coming and buying that asset. So what I need to really look at is that if I improve the capacity utilization from 15 to say 60%, 70%, the value of the company will go up. If I have to improve the capacity utilization from 15 to 70%, there are 2-3 things which is required. One, I need to have a quality management which has to really run those companies. 2, somebody has to put in working capital. 3rd, I may have to bring in some capital expenditure to be done. So these are all money which I have to put on an asset which I have bought, and then harness the asset for 2-3 years, bring it to some sizable situation, and then I sell it. Then I get the value. Now the question is that, which I'm willing to do that. There is no problem on that. But after 3 years, it is like we have to make evaluation that it is like putting a good money on a bad asset. So good money on a bad asset, what are the challenges is a task by itself. But over the period of time, we have learned what we should do and what we should not do. So that keeps happening. But that even the existing banker can do it. The question is that it's not that I only know that I have that rocket science, or I've got that formula with me, which the existing bankers don't have. They also can do it. But the question which comes with the existing banker is that putting good money on bad money. I've already lost 100 rupee asset has already come to 10 rupees. Now, if I say on that 90 rupees loss, you are now asking me to put another 30, 40 rupees. He'll say that, why should I do that? And that is why he wants to sell. So many times when he wants to sell, this is a challenge. He doesn't want to, he feels that the right price is 10. But tomorrow, if somebody else like an investor like me comes and makes it 40, 50, and he makes money out of that, I will come under the radar. So why should I sell? So that is where the problem is. Today, under IBC, 70 to 80% of the companies are going into liquidation. Liquidation is a destruction in value of the companies. The company, it is like your death house it is. It's like a death knell. You just push it, it's like a guillotine stone. You push the company into IBC. 8 out of 10 companies today, which goes to IBC, is going into liquidation. Many of those companies can be revived. Many of these companies before going into IBC could be revived. Many of those companies could be revived by the existing bankers themselves. But the confidence to revive the company needs capital, needs competency, needs time, patience, and willingness to sweat it out. So all that is lacking, and accountability as well. And when you have somebody at the helm of affairs for 1 year, it is not possible it is going to happen.
A quick short supplementary. In the normal times, forget about now. In the normal times, what is the average, say, lead time between you are buying a stressed asset, bringing it up to the value added a good asset to be sold again? What is the average lead time has been generally?
I'll put that into 2-3 buckets and tell you the timelines. Suppose if it is there are 2 ways it happens. One is that, like I told you in the example, I need to revive the company and sell it. Normally, it could take about 3 to 4 years. From the time I buy, from the time I sell, it will take 3 to 4 years for me to get my money out, 9 out of 10 times. If it gets into a litigation, for example, some assets, what happens when I buy, there could be underlying value of the asset will be there. And then if I sell it on assets various basis because the borrower is resisting to give the asset back to me, I have to fight it through a legal process and litigation. That takes sometimes about 10 to 15 years, sometimes. But most of the average time takes about 7 years. So where I have to fight, take the asset, challenge the borrower, and then try to recover the money, it takes a long time. Where I'm working along with the borrower, trying to revive the company, and then I have to sell, probably it'll take 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next question.
That gives a very good idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Next question is by Mr. Ganapathy Ramasamy, sir. He's a non-BSM median. He is on board of several government task force and committees on tax and financial reforms. Ganapathy, sir.
Thank you very much. Just a few questions. One is related to, I'm fully agree with you regarding the fear.
Yeah.
Fear in the minds of the lenders. That's also very important, because continuously the vigilance, CBI, all of them haunting them, so nobody is ready to come forward to lend the money. I will agree with that. Second, the 2016 onwards, the IBC has come. Unfortunately, that IBC, the aim is to revive the company. It was in the offshoot of the earlier BAFR. Now they want to revive it. Unfortunately, things are happening. Most of the companies going for liquidation. And the number of cases before NCLT, because of the low limit of 1 lakh rupees, which was fixed earlier, luckily they have increased to 1 crore rupees. And there is also the Reserve Bank has started instructing the bankers forcefully refer to the IBC. That is a very wrong policy which they have taken. If it is really a chronic, willful defaulter, you can go for that IBC. Otherwise, the bank should give all sort of a comfort like one-time settlement, maybe an open, transparent manner they can give. That is the one thing. What do you feel that now these banks are banned for payment of dividends? Today, the RBI has given one view. Second, how this market capitalization is going to come for them. Second, the merger of banks. So because of merger of banks, is there any advantage for the stressed assets? And whether this moratorium also can be helped them to at least to revive within about 6 months' time. What do you feel like this?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ganapathy. So I'll just touch upon this. It's a very, very, very hot topic on IBC. So I'd like to spend some time on this. I'll just try to see how concise I can be on the banking recovery space. We started our DRT process was, I'll just go back to 1975, 1980. BFR was started for the purpose of restructuring, re-evaluation. That failed. So then what happened in 95, we started, 93, 94, we started debt recovery tribunal for banks to recover money fast. 3-4, it worked for 2-3 years, it failed. So then the government now in 2016, they came back with IBC. IBC as a concept, when it came, I was part of some of the committees, I was part of some of the regulatory things. So two things I saw, there were two things which was positive and negative as such. One is that the positive part was the borrowers thought the company belonged to them forever. That prior to IBC process, it was like that, nothing you could do about the change of management. There were very few provisions in law which you could really exercise to take the control of the existing borrower. So IBC was a lethal weapon which the bankers could use to change the management. So from that perspective, we really thought this is going to change the face of Indian banking, because unscrupulous borrowers, we can remove them, and we can change the management, and then we can try and revive those companies. So initially, again, it worked reasonably well for 2-3 years, and then now we know what it is. Now the problem in IBC, let's now touch upon IBC. IBC as a concept, IBC as a concept is a good concept. There's no two ways about it. It does 2-3 things. It aimed at 2-3 things. One is that to change management, and two is that to comprehensively restructure, because the banking platform restructuring which we were doing prior to that was only financial restructuring. It was not business restructuring, because creditors and other stakeholders were not into account. It was only financial restructuring. So in a IBC platform, you can do it's like a surgery of complete surgery, and then get the company back to limping. So that was the thinking behind by the government, that one, unscrupulous borrowers we can throw out. Two is that we can have a comprehensive restructuring, and restructuring in the sense that we can get a better management who can do all that by the company and get the maximum value. Now let's go back to the first 12 cases which the RBI did that. These were all landmark cases which RBI first initially pushed them. They said these are the, if we solve if we solve these 12 companies, they thought that some 50-60% of the Indian NPA banking, NPA system we can solve. So first, let's go top-down approach. They pushed all the companies into it. To some extent, some of these companies also, like there were first few companies, Bhushan Steel, 3 or 4 companies. Bhushan Steel, it happened. Then that famous SR Steel thing came in. Electro Steel Castings happened. Some 4 or 5 cases, it happened. Bhushan Power. Now the question you have to ask is that why people are not coming in IBC platform and buying the companies. The first question I wonder is that why people are not coming. It's a great opportunity. I'm getting a company. Let's say a good management comes and takes only the assets of the company and not the liabilities of the company. Okay, so it's a good platform for a change of management to happen, and good promoters can come and buy these companies and run these companies, and whatever maximum value they can give. It did happen in first few cases, but it started declining and dissipating very fast. You have to understand why it happened. Why it happened was the judicial process took inordinate amount of time. If you take SR Steel judgment, sir, 2 years the promoter had to wait after putting in his bid. 2 years, he came in, when the first bid came in, the promoter gave us 17,000 crore bid was given by the promoter. This man came in and gave 50,000 crore. 50,000 crore from a 17,000 crore bid by the promoter came in a disguised form from 17 to 50. It was a real price discovery mechanism. But when did he get the asset? He got the asset after 24 months, after losing one cycle, the boom cycle of that steel he lost. So the question is that if you're going to take time, 2 things happen. One, you take inordinate amount of litigations which happen even in the IBC platform. The investor who's putting in money, I borrow money, keep it in my bank account. It's not that money is idle. I mean, money is available. Everything has a cost. If I have to make arrangements for that, and I don't know when I will get that asset. I can get it in 6 months. I can get it in 2 years, and I have to lose it. So people hesitancy to come and buy in IBC platform started dwindling. That is point number 1. Point number 2, which also happened, is that even after buying those assets, Tata Steel bought Bhushan Steel. Tata Steel bought Bhushan Steel. They went back. They were running the company. It was an approved plan of NCLT, where it is a government approved plan. The power guy came and cut the company lines. It is
Yes.
it was few crores. So Tata Steel felt it is not worth going back to NCLT and then fighting it for it. He paid that money. So your own statutory bodies, your own government bodies don't like to honor the court orders. So if I'm a buyer coming to buy an IBC platform, first of all, I don't know when I will get the asset. Two is that after getting the asset, I thought I got the asset, but there are another litigations which is going to happen and people don't adhere to it. So they don't want to buy and take this kind of risk. So your question on why it is not happening is primarily because of these two risks. One is that timing is the biggest issue in IBC platform, and litigations which are fraught with this takes it away.
Right.
And now, why banks cannot do it prior to that and do that? They've been trying, sir. Honestly, they've been trying. But if the banks have to do it, they can do it under two things. One is that they have to be realistic about what they want. Value is 30. The question, if he does it at 30 and he takes a hit of 70, the same CBI and CVC comes into play. If it goes into IBC and he takes even 10, nobody questions him. It is a legal process. Take a hit of 70, I will come under the scanner. So that is where they are pushing into IBC. No investor is coming to buy in IBC. Now 8 out of 10 companies are going into liquidation in IBC, and the entire process is now completely vitiated and lost. Now coming back to the bank dividends which you're talking about, in my view, it is a good thing because banks themselves don't have enough capital. On top of it, we're asking them to pay dividends. But as investors in these banks, probably you must be feeling left out that you're not getting your annual dividends. You might have been looking at as a stream of income.
Correct. Thank you, sir. Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next, can we have Gilbert, sir?
Yeah, thanks, Kanagaraj. Venkatu, just for your information, Mr. GR used to be the former president of CA Association, based out of Coimbatore, and was on the committees of several banking reforms, task forces on tax reforms, etc.
Okay.
Yeah, just to mull over the point that you were earlier making, between liquidity and profitability. In some of the startup and early stage companies, profitability can be achieved only when they, start spending that liquidity in, expanding or, trying to, ramp up revenues and etc. So somewhere I find your message bit contradicting there.
So that's what I told you. There are two things which you need to really look at it. If you have an investor who's willing to back you up and is willing to loosen the purse strings and is willing to give you X amount of rupees, I agree with you. But if you are the only promoter and you are the only guy who has to ramp it up and you don't have liquidity, you don't have the capital backing, then it will not come into play. No, you have to take a ladder-like approach. You go 10, you take one step at a time and then grow. But if you, in a startup, you need to have your investors to back you up. If you have investors to back you up, then you can blow up the money as much as they allow you to blow up, you blow it up. But if you don't have an investor who's willing to back you up, then what is the choice you have?
I see your point. Yeah, I see your point. But
if you have enough capital, you can do whatever you want. The point I was trying to highlight is that you have to have your capital. Capital is what? It's a nomenclature. At the end of the day, it is cash. The cash, whether it is capital or whether it is liquidity, it is cash. If you have cash in your bank, whether it is coming to your own sources or you have investors to back you up, there's no problem in your business model. Then you work out your business model in a startup. But there are a lot of companies which are not having that luxury where they have capital which is willing to knock their doors. Then what is the choice? Then you will die fast. The only way is that you have to survive during this time and then see whether any investor will come. If your investor backing up is there, then it is a different case. But in many cases, that may not be the situation. I'm only addressing that constituent.
Understand.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Next, can we have Arun Kumar Manikam, sir?
Sir. Yeah. So good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So this is a very hot discussion, like Arnab room. Entire country is sitting on the bank's head. So I have two questions for you. Number one,
Okay.
whether the central bank has enough reserve to support the country. Number two, is it possible to borrow from the world at very cheaper interest rate of 2% or 1.5% from abroad countries so that things will stabilize quickly?
Who has to borrow, you're saying?
Country, as a country, can we borrow from outside world? I have been told in some countries the interest rate is hardly 1%, 1.5%.
That actually government is doing that. That borrowing is happening. And the issue is that whether RBI can do it, yes, RBI can do it. The question is that will RBI do it? That is not for me to answer the question, but RBI can do it. But if you expect the bank to do it, to do the heavy lifting by the bank, I don't think. I'm a weak body. I'm fraught with a lot of diseases. Now you're asking me to carry some two people on my head. It is not possible. Somebody has to really give me that platform to do that. As a banker, I'm talking. It is banking today is not in a situation. RBI, central bank can do it. Of course, government can do it. Government can do it. It did happen in 2008, post Lehman crisis. The central banks took those calls. Even now, the central bank, one of the suggestions given to probably in the next few days, we'll see from the finance minister whether the corporate bonds can be bought by the government or by Reserve Bank. If they start doing all those things, then it'll start. Then the liquidity easing will happen, and banks have to necessarily be supported by guarantee. We have made mistakes. We have lost money. Now don't ask us to take further hit. We don't have that ability.
Does the central bank has the reserve to support?
If central bank doesn't have, who has got? You think Indian banking system has got? You have to see between the people we have got. Central bank does have. We have $480 billion reserve we have got. We do have reserves, which one of the strongest central banks in the world today. And if somebody can do it, even government is depending on central bank only. A lot of dividends last year they declared. This year also they're expecting dividend transfer to the government. Central bank is one of the strongest central banks we have in the world. So it is possible for them to do it. But the question is that how much we will do it in a calibrated manner. They will come in, they will give some small doses, and they will try to ask the banks to do the heavy lifting. My view is that you can keep making podium talks, but at the end of the day, if it has to happen on the ground, you have to do something drastic. This doses, this is like polio drops, giving little doses will not help.
Sorry, one supplementary small question. So how pressurized do you feel, sir? Because the entire pressure is on your heads of top management. How pressurized you are?
I was telling Professor Ramki, I'm doing this activity for last 22 years. Okay. So once, I don't know, one old Tamil movie was there. Nagesh used to say that, எவ்வளவு நாள் உனக்கு ப்ராப்ளம் இன்னும் 2 வருஷம் அதுக்கு பிறகு நான் பழகி போடணும் அந்த மாதிரி. I'm now used to these stressed situations for last 22 years I've been doing. So it is not that, it is not for me, it is for the country we are going through this. So stress, if you keep doing your activity every day, day in and day out, you do that, you get used to it. So from my individual point of view, we are used to these situations. But as a banking system also, banks again, you have to grade into 2-3 kind of banks. Strong banks, weak banks, moderate banks. Strong banks will have great opportunities. For example, if you take HDFC Bank, I don't want to talk about my bank, but I'll talk about HDFC Bank. If we have to talk about HDFC Bank, he's well positioned. He's got enough capital. You'll see along the way NBFC is dying. You'll see along the way small banks dying. You'll see along the way a lot of opportunities will come. He will be able to take advantage of it. So the question is that strong banks will do very well. The moderate banks have to survive. The weak banks will perish. Now, the gentleman asked about a consolidation of banks. I just missed out. Mr. Ganapathy asked that. I missed the point. Consolidation of banks of public sector will actually help in two forms. One is that that management bandwidth it releases. It comes all the banks come under a better management. And two is that lot of wasted cost can be cut by consolidation of banks, which is what is happening. So in my view, consolidation of banks, of PSU banks was a good step, and only thing, it will take some time to settle down. But once it settles down, I think it will be much better. There's no point in having weak banks. Either you should have allowed them to die. That is not possible in the Indian system today. The only way is to merge with stronger banks, which is not the right way to do, because you will make the strong bank weak. But then the government has to subsidize, which at some point of time it will happen.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Next question, can we have from Premanand, sir?
G, vanakkam.
Hello, Prem.
Or a chinna question. Many of the financial institutions which were in the business of microfinancing later turned into small finance banks. They were doing really well when they were microfinance institutions. So how do you rate their performance since their inception as small finance banks? And what do you think will be their role in the revival of the economy once this COVID situation stabilizes?
Prem, I think the important thing over there also is that you need a lot of support, because you see microfinance now will be in problem. Next 3 to 4 months, they will not be in a position to pay money because their livelihoods have been completely taken away. So these individuals will have problems. So these microfinance banks will also have problems. So the issue is that, just 1 minute. So the issue is that again you need support from either a central bank, or you need support from government to help them during this time, because by themselves they will struggle for the next at least a year or so. So, but once it stabilizes, I mean, it is like this. There are wartime heroes and there are good time heroes and there are wartime heroes. In good times they will do very well. In wartime they'll have problems. So these small guys will always have challenges during wartime. This is a situation like that. So next 1 year, I feel there'll be a challenge for all these small banks. But hopefully, if they get right support and right inputs, then they may come out of it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Manu, sir. Manu, sir, you are online. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening. This is Manu here. I am 2002 batch of BSc MED, sir. Currently credited SME at Axis Bank, Coimbatore.
Okay.
My question is on the RBI moratorium. You have answered much of it in parts, but just to draw your attention to a comment made by the Tirupur Export Association president. He has said that the 3 months moratorium is grossly inadequate and they want at least 12 months. And I have been interacting with a lot of our customers, and most of them feel that they are actually looking at uncertainty. Tirupur precisely, because they are dependent very much on Europe and the US markets. So, and there is a general overbearing feeling that RBI is not really doing enough. So, what is your call on that? And is RBI playing a wait and watch game?
So, this 3 months, what they've announced is only as of now. The question is that even this 3 months, if you really look at it, this is exactly the point I was trying to touch earlier. Is that yes, you cannot do this in a very calibrated manner. You have to take a big call. The problem we as regulators, as bankers are facing, is that they are giving one step, one dose at a time. This will not work. The question is that even today, if you see what RBI governor has said, he said that 3 months moratorium you take, that 3 months moratorium, the banks have to make 10% provision. Now the question is that that 10% provision Arun Kumar was telling before we started the show, that 3 months interest alone for State Bank of India will be about some 4,000 to 5,000 crore. It's a 45,000 crore. 10% provision, he has to make 5,000 crore provision. State Bank of India has to make. Now, on one side, you are saying somebody else to take moratorium. On the other side, you are asking bank to take provision. I mean, how will bank be in a position to lend money? Level, you are saying we want the money to flow into the economy in a seamless manner with the government, with the banks to really support companies in terms of crisis. At one level, we don't have capital. At 2 levels, whatever capital we have got, we have to make additional provisions out of that. What is residual left for us to lend? So it'll absolutely not work. My question, let's wait and see. They'll again, representation will happen after 3 months. Again, they'll say 3 months, 6 months. The last 1 year, the regulatory oversight has swung the pendulum from one extreme to another extreme. So it is like, if a guy is bad, he should not be given money. It's come to that situation. If you're a 30-day past due customer, if no bank will ever be able to touch you. That is how the regulatory oversights are so strong that sick guys will be finding it very difficult to get money from the banks. That is why I was telling in my introduction statement is that keep liquidity. Whether you are a businessman or whether you are an individual, next 12 to 18 months, please try to create as much liquidity as possible. Getting money from the banking system is not going to be possible unless something from heaven comes where, as I told you, government gives guarantee or Reserve Bank tells that guarantee they will provide. I don't think banks will be in a position to lend.
Okay, sir.
I
Thank
agree
you,
with
sir.
you. I agree
Yes,
with
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And the floor is open to others. Do others have any question? Professors, if you don't want to add something, you can.
Venkata sir, I have a question. This is Shankar Narayan.
Yes, Shankar.
There was not much for the NBFCs in the recent announcements. So, do you foresee some NBFC falling into the stress asset in the future?
No, NBFC, today they gave that 50,000 crore line they have given to all these NABARD, SIDBI and all those institutions to do that. But that amount will also be not enough. NBFCs, that's what I'm saying. India had 4 challenges in my last 25 years of my banking experience. We had one in 97, 98. There were 20, if I'm right, there were about 20,000 or even more than that NBFCs were there. At the end in 2000, 2001, only 20 NBFCs survived. We were one among them. There were only 20 NBFCs survived. Similarly, in 2007-8, it was not major collapse over there. But back again, we are now facing this crisis of NBFC. So the question is that a lot of companies in the next 12 months to 18 months, the small and medium sector, MSME sector, don't have money even to pay salaries. If you really look at the current situation, 25 to 40% of the companies don't have money to pay next 30 days salary. They don't have. We have to necessarily pump in money into those companies. Now the question is that who will pump in those monies? The question is we are at individual level, we are giving some 500 rupees and all this stuff. At company levels, we are still waiting for a package to come. But if they don't come with some big bang kind of a solution, and then again they're going to come and say that we'll give you 1 month interest waiver, all this will not work. What he needs is liquidity. There are a lot of challenges. There are companies which needs liquidity. There are companies which needs solvency. But liquidity is the foremost. It's like your lifeline. It's like a blood in the system. You have to necessarily inject the blood into the system. It's all gone. We are bleeding actually, and you have to pump in that blood into the system. And you have to come at the right time. You give after 6 months, if 30% or 20% of the company die, after that you try and inject. It is too late in the day. I mean, if you really look at post demonetization, there are a lot of companies in the informal sector had a lot of challenges, and many of them will not come back. Then again, the next step was in the GST. Again, many of them got wiped out. Now, in this order, if next 2 months they are not taken care of, you will see a chaos in the system. I mean, and large part of our workforce is sitting over there. It's not about you and me sitting at home and talking nicely and having Zoom chat. The guys are struggling on the street, doesn't know whether he's got a job on his hand, next month's salary, whether he's going to get or not. He doesn't even know that. And companies themselves are in the same situation. When we make statements like protect all jobs, ensure that nobody will be sacked, I should have money to protect my people, no? I mean, how many of those companies, Tatas can do it? I mean, in that sector of MSME and SME, how can they protect employment for people? Business they cannot protect. How will you protect employees? So I think where we are faced with challenge is in terms of timing. I think in all these kind of thing, timing is very important. You can come with best of the solutions at very late in the day. It may become too late in the day for you to do this. This is a patient sitting on the ventilator. You cannot tell after he dies, I'll infuse life into it. It is not possible. Next 10, 15 days, they have to come with some big bang reform, especially in the small and thing. That 3 months reforms, 3 months moratorium somebody was talking about. That 3 months moratorium is peanuts actually. That guy is struggling to make his payments, and you're now saying in 3 months you give that 4th month, I'll declare you as an NPA. I mean, which bank will be able to lend money to him? It's a crisis of a lifetime. I think our regulators and policymakers have to really understand it's a crisis of our lifetime, and it is not important you have the best of the brains or wisdom sitting over there. Come in to inject at the right time, and the right time is quickly and fastly it is slipping away. We don't have too much of time. I mean, within 30 days, UK government came in, US government came in, all of them have come and announced it. We are now coming in trickling, I'm giving you 1 lakh crore, I'm giving this. I mean, you have to necessarily do at the sectors at the right time. I think in another 15 days time, if we don't do anything big bang, I think we are in for a very, very rough shot.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Next, I have a question. So, all banks they are ready. I will put it in Tamil, sir. எல்லாமே நாங்க loans கொடுக்க ரெடியா இருக்கோம் அப்படினு சொன்னாலுமே கூட how to apply it and அதுக்கப்புறம் அவங்க process பண்ணி when this will happen. And in the 30-40 days, we have absolute no transactions. ஒரு டிரான்சாக்ஷனுமே கிடையாதுங்கிறப்ப will it make any sense? எந்த டிரான்சாக்ஷனுமே இல்லாம திடீர்னு ஒரு புது லோன் போறதுங்கிறது is it possible, sir?
இல்ல யாருக்கு லோன் தரேன்னு சொல்லிருக்காங்க? I mean, I want to understand who they are willing to lend. The guy who got back, maybe they are willing to lend because I have a data analytics. I have analytics that you will pay the money. I'll give you the money. I'm saying, are you willing to give the needy guy, the guy who needs money? I think that's a question you need to ask.
Yes, sir. Actually, எங்களுடைய problem என்னன்னா sir, we are about to get a loan. Maybe CC உடைய extension 15 lakhs they are about to give. But அவங்க இப்ப என்ன சொல்றாங்க, இல்லைங்க பேங்க் எல்லாமே க்ளோஸ்ட், நாங்க இன்ஸ்பெக்ஷனே வர முடியல. ஒன்ஸ் இன்ஸ்பெக்ஷன் வந்துட்டு அப்புறம் தான் எல்லாமே நாங்க சொல்ல முடியும் அப்படிங்கறப்ப
over. No, then matter is over. When he'll come for inspection after the 3rd of May, and when he will come to your office and do inspection another 15-30 days from there. By the time you match your game is over, no?
Pipeline இருக்கு நாங்களே அப்படினா
I think this is the right time for us to really take bold steps. It is time that we may make mistakes. We have made this is a mistake which we can condone ourselves.
Right, sir. அப்ப பைப்லைன்ல இருக்கிற நாங்களே கஷ்டம்னா புது கம்பெனிஸ் எல்லாம்
we have made mistake, but this is a mistake we can afford to make, and this is a mistake we should make.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello, sir. I hope. How are you, sir? This is Dr. Rupa.
I'm fine, Dr. Rupa. I've been following you very closely.
That's great. Sir, I have 2 things to ask. As a borrower and also as an export, exporter kind of role.
Yeah.
See, as a borrower, the question is something which is in line with what Kanagraj just now asked to you. So it is like, the RBI today morning, when the RBI governor announced like focus on banks will be to increase the credit flows. RBI will focus more on increasing the credit flows. So that means 100 people may be looking out for getting some loans from banks, but the money which is going to be given by, or the fund which is going to be infused by RBI into the banking system will be very, very less when compared to the need of the people. So the gap is going to be very high. So it is going to be like evaluating the right person to give the loan, something like that. I'm talking about scenario after 2 months or 3 months. It's not going to be the immediate scenario. So, and on what basis the evaluations will be made? So this question may be useful for those who are aspiring to get some loans from bank. Because if you look out for liquidity, profit, or the balance sheet residue, nothing will be there. Everything will be at a very, very unfortunate situation. So on what basis you are going to? Are you going to stick on to the same criterions which you were using previously, or you are going to change the criterions and your evaluation will be of totally different? This is my question.
Yeah. So first question, it's not that banks suffer from liquidity. Actually, banks are sitting with large amounts of money. Even today, RBI governor was telling about 4.5 lakh crores are there in the banking. They've cut the reverse repo rate because they don't want the banks to give the money back to the RBI, so that they will lend money. But the question which we need to ask for, it's not liquidity is a problem at this point of time to the banks. Banks are sitting on, and last 1 year, not only this last 2 months, I'm saying last 1.5 years, liquidity in the banking system has been enough. The problem is that the credit risk-taking ability with the banks is not there. The same question which you asked right now, what will the banks do? Banks will not lend money to you. The question, lend in the sense, I'm using an extreme phrase, but what I'm trying to say is that I have to satisfy myself that it will not become an NPA. How will I satisfy myself that you will not become an NPA? First, I have to study your business. How much of your business has suffered in the last COVID 30 days or 45 days? What is the industry phenomenon? How much your business is going to contract? What is the competition going to do? What is your working capital requirement? All this will take time. And at the end of it, take it from me, the decision if I have to take on a very, very, what do you say, at an intellectual level, I will never be able to lend money to you, or to you in the sense that to the system. So the only way I have to take is that I have to take a very emotional view, saying that the industry needs money. I have to take a call. I have a track record of this customer of the past. He's a customer with me for the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There is a decent track record of the customer. And I feel that that business, even if this business will suffer, he or she will have the ability to tide over it. And I take a business call and not a very intellectual or if I have to go on this basis, in fact, my thing will tighten. If I was giving you 100 rupees earlier as loan, now, in fact, from 100, you want me to give 150. Now, when I have to give you 50 rupees more from what I've earlier given you, you don't have enough stocks because your business has come down. You don't have enough stocks to support that working capital. You're asking more. How will I give money? In fact, I'll say, you should pay me 20 rupees back so that on stock DP basis, I can have only 80. I've already given you 100. So the question, where will I lend money to customers on working capital basis? It will be very challenging. So this is again the point I'm trying to raise, is that one, what the regulators and the policymakers talk and what happens at the ground level are not in sync. That is point number one. Point number two is that I'm Ramki's student, so I'm very candid about speaking, because the class we used to speak and now I'm speaking over here. I'm taking the liberty of speaking because we always taught us to speak our mind. So I'm just speaking my mind. So the second important point is that, point is that this is a crisis of a lifetime. It's an emotional call. Okay, I will make wrong decision. I will make right decision. I'll make wrong decision, and the chances of making wrong decision is higher. But this is, in my wisdom of last 30, 40 years, the banking system can go wrong in making decision. This is the time to go wrong. There's nothing wrong in going wrong now as compared to what we have done in the past.
Sir, what you have said is very correct. It's a lifetime situation. My concern is many of them would have gone bankrupt, and many of them would have lost their client base and all those export. Even before COVID, it was 34% down. Overall, I'm talking. So during COVID, no economic activity, no export activity, no business activity. So everything would have gone out of their hand. So to reconstruct, they need. Are you going to suggest them to go for a restructuring, or going to come with a fresh proposal? Indicating their previous, track records. What is there going to be a common stand from different banks or bankers to help the borrowers?
So I'll put this in two parts. What bank will talk and what bank will do. Bank talking will talk what the government wants you to talk. We have got enough money. We lend money. There is enough capital available to all borrowers. That is a political statement which all banks will make, including our bank. We'll all make that statement. The question is that at distribution level or at the disbursement level, it'll be even more stringent than what happened in the past. I will now say that, boss, this company is going down. How will I lend money? Tomorrow it will be an NPA in my book. If it is going to be an NPA in my book, where will I survive? It's
So
between
this
you
is
and
the
me.
case with every company, no? It is not like earlier case. Now every company is going to come with this kind of stories, no?
So that's what I will lend only to AAA and AA companies. I'll lend to Tata companies and maybe some of the Birla companies,
You're
not
playing
all.
safe.
Even Birla. Yes, that's all.
Playing
Or I'll
safe.
keep the money at 4.5%. It's okay. At least I have 100 plus 4.5. Now you're asking
Okay.
100 will become 60. So 40 I'll lose. No. So the question is that the only way for us to salvage is that this is a crisis time. Government has to take a call. If suppose we are going to lend another 10 lakh crores in the banking system, let's say another 10 to 15 lakh crores we have to lend in the next 6 months or so. Let's say we want a growth of 15%. 100 lakh crores is our banking loans and advances. I'm saying 15%. Let's say we said, if I make a 15 lakh crore additional disbursement, if I have to do, you give a guarantee that if you say 3 lakh crores, 20% of that goes bad. First 20% government will be able to take a risk, balance 80%. Second loss, let the banks take. Then we will take, because risk in all the cases it is not. It is not in all the cases. In all the cases, the risk is not 100%. The
Yes,
risk
sir.
is that 20%. So that 20% guarantee, if I get from the bank, from the government or from the regulator, I'll be willing to lend. That is what is required. It's a credit guarantee has to come from the regulators or the policymakers. If that happens, then the kickstart of the economy will happen. Otherwise, if you are saying me to lend, I'm a sick man. You are asking me to, as I told you, you are asking me to carry some 4 people on my shoulder.
So for that 20% risk anticipated outlay, 80% of the borrowers are going to aspire for. So that's what is going to happen.
No. I think it is. I hope good heads work together and then they understand the problem, because the problem what we had in the last 2 years and the problem we are going to have in the next 1 year are completely different. These two are different problems. These two are extremely different problems. You should not mix that problem with this problem. This problem is an existential problem. This is not. It's a survival problem. That was a growth problem. How much I have to grow? 100, I should go by 10%, 15%. That was a growth issue. How much I can give the money for growing? Here I am giving the money for surviving. So this is a survival issue. So you have to look at lending in a very different way as compared to the lending you have done in the past. If I use that metrics over here, no money will flow into the system.
Will go out of your hand. So thanks for expressing the mind of bankers. We understood. Yes. Thank you, sir.
I saw Shankar was there. SM Shankar was there.
Yeah. Hello, Venkat. How are you?
Thank you, SM, for
Excellent.
giving this opportunity.
Oh, no, it's all our pleasure. It's a wonderful stage, actually, platform. We are all able to, discuss.
Closing up, Shankar, or is there time for one quick question?
Yeah, of course, sir. Of course, sir.
Sir,
Please,
please ask, sir.
Please, sir. Please, you are always welcome.
This is about
have
your
no-
nature of business in the normal times, nothing to do with the crisis. I mean, so that's something, as you say, is beyond what of the. You said about enhancing the value of the stress management over 3-4 years. Forget about the litigation and all that. Now, that looks like there is a lot of, not only just the bringing in the quality top management or whatever it is, but a lot of operational improvements and things like that. How do you do that? Is it through management consultants and or do you also have in-house expertise for that? Because it's, getting it from say 10-15% capacity to 60% capacity, cost cutting, etc., in order to enhance the value for the stressed company, requires a lot of management consulting type of job. How do you get that done?
Yeah, coming to it. So there are two things in this, sir. One is that first thing, when we get in, we want to control the finance very strong. So first thing what we try and do is that get a good strong CFO. CFO is the man, the cash in and cash out is going through him. So get a strong CFO. So to get the finance side fixed, that's the first fixing we have to do. And the other production, operation, efficiency thing is a stage 2 exercise. So stage 2 exercise, it takes a little longer, and with the management, many times we talk to the management and we try to do it. If we bring in good management, they themselves will get it fixed. There are two things. Either I go with the existing management or I change the management. If I have to go with the existing management, I have to get into the company at all levels, like you said, at all levels. If there is a change of management or if there is a partial change at the top, then I don't get into nitty-gritties of day-to-day functioning. All that we look at it is that at operational level, get a good, strong CFO, and then get a periodic reporting of sales figure, inventory figures, debtors figures, and all that stuff, and see how it is going on a monthly and a quarterly basis. If you find things are not going as per your requirement, then probably you will get into some of these things. If some of these things happen along the way, then it doesn't. So there will be cases where we need to get those experts happening. It does happen, but not in too many cases.
Yeah. Hi, Venkat. This is Sitaraman here. May I ask a question for you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. Just thinking aloud, of course, most of the discussion we've been having is mainly in the supply side of it, in terms of, how do banks get to lend money to investors and industrialists, etc. What is your reading about, we don't have a demand in the market. The demand has slumped quite badly. It's been slumping for over the last 1 year or so. And now post-COVID, I think it's going to be falling even steeply down. So what are your thoughts? How can we really regenerate demand in the market, especially, when the jobs are being lost and livelihoods of people are being affected so badly? Where is the consumer demand going to come? Because that is ultimately, earlier there used to be a problem of credit growth not being there, and all the reasons you've cited are essentially to, bottlenecks for extending credit to industries, etc. But from the consumer market demand side of it, there isn't any silver lining that's visible right now. So where is that going to come from? And do you think government has to step in and kind of give some cash subsidies to the middle class and the weaker sections of the people, like something like what the US has done now for the COVID crisis, where they're giving $600 per head to every family, every individual. So something like that, you think, because that's going to be important, because what do we do with all the credit and the money, even if you borrow? If there's no demand in the market for your products, why would industrialists even spend or expand capacity or set up new businesses?
No, it's a very good question in terms of there is whatever you try to do, the next 12 to 18 months, there's going to be a demand contraction is definitely going to happen. The question is that whatever you try to pump in, earlier we were talking about our entire GDP. If you look at it, 30% used to be our saving rate. Saving rate started coming down from 30 to 17. Now the question is that people will start saving more. Even now, all the consumer discretionary, you'll think twice after all this COVID experiences to go and next at least 12 to 18 months, even if you have money, you're not going to go and splash it. You just want to protect it because you don't know the uncertainties which will happen in terms of the economy and things like that. So from demand side, I'm not too sure whether you can do too much to prop up at this point of time. All that you have to now do as country, what we have to try and do is that first protect the employment, first get the people engaged, let the business survive. Don't worry about demand. Demand will contract. We have no choice in the matter. It will even whatever injection you give to like a booster you give, consumption is not going to go up just because we have got money. Even today, I'm thinking that let us look at this group itself as one of as an illustration. Will you spend as much as you spent say 2 years back? You will not do. No, you will just see that okay, now you will not do that. So your thinking pattern at all levels have changed. More so at the middle level and lower level guys, when they know that their salaries that whether the salaries, whether their job is there or not, they don't know. How will they go and spend money? So they're not going to spend money. So you don't try to prop up demand. My only request is that to all the policymakers and regulators, don't do exotic things. Just do fundamentally few things. Today, it is not, as I told you, it is not about profitability. It is about survival. Now, as a country, if you look at it, we have to survive. We have to survive. We have to protect jobs. If you have to protect jobs, you have to have business continue to exist. If you have business have to continue to exist, some of them may not make money now, may make money in the future. Some of them may not make money at all and may die in the future. But I'm saying that right now, don't take the decision. He's going to die in the future today. Let him die today itself. Don't take that call. We will take the call 1 year, 2 years from now when the demand starts stabilizing, and then you put all your metrics in place. and then you take evaluation what I need to tighten. And now it is a question of you have come to the road. Now you have to survive. You survive first and then talk about demand. Demand is not a strategy you have to look at. I'm telling you, we have inherent demand is there. Such a large country, genuine demand is there for basic consumption. There is demand. The discretionary consumption is where the wisdom factor or the knowledge factor or the payment factor will come in. So those things we may not go and buy. Some of it you'll buy. Some of it you may still not do it. But that part of it, you leave it for the moment. The first part of it, whatever genuine demand is there, you just protect that demand and just protect those businesses. If you don't protect the businesses, even those demand will start contracting.
Right. Yeah. So I guess there has to be some kind of a selectivity in terms of, pushing credit also to certain sectors, which can push start the economy, kind of at least, where there's genuine demand, maybe in infrastructure and, the core sectors, maybe that's the area where a lot of money needs to flow in from the banking sector too.
No, I'm saying that right now you have to grade it into 2 or 3 categories. You have to grade it. One, I'm saying that the top end companies, there is no issue. They'll find their own mechanism. You lend money, you don't lend money, they'll find their mechanism, and banks are sitting with money, they will lend to them. There's no issue as that. You have to now look at the SME and the MSME and the unorganized sector. These are the 3 categories are vulnerable sectors of the society as well as the entire business space. So those guys, how you are going to deal with the big guys? In any case, like you said, demand is going to contract. They're not going to invest now. They're just going to run the businesses with marginal efficiency enhancement. They'll try and do technology enhancement. They'll try to do. They're not going to go in for big investment. They're also not going to put in a lot of money. So that is not going to happen. The smaller and the weaker guys, it's like your first aid. The next 3 to 6 months to 1 year is a first aid. You're giving to a blood hemorrhage which has started happening. You protect them and then you get into discretionary mode. What will survive, what will not survive. Right now, if you get into the diagnostic mode that I will give this fellow, I will not give that fellow will not survive, this fellow, it's like in Italy, they decide, no, that old guys, I'll ask them to die, young guys, I will treat them. If you get into that mode of decision making, you will kill the good ones also, you will kill along the way, because all of them are needing attention today. And you don't have the ability to decide how much and who you have to give. I'm saying next 90 days to 180 days, you try and support as much as you can across the spectrum. Then slowly try to tighten the system and then get your gradation in place. Some mishaps will happen, some mistakes will happen, but that's a mistake, that's a price we should be willing to pay.
Okay. Thanks, Venkat.
Venkat, Gilbert again.
Yeah.
ஸோ இந்த தமிழ் போரான்லாம் பார்த்தீங்கன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன், இந்த டாக்டர் வந்து கண்ணாடி கழட்டி வச்சுட்டு தே டெலிவர் ஹோல் பஞ்ச் ஆஃப் பேட் நியூஸ். ஸோ நீங்கள் வந்து நீ கண்ணாடி போட்டே வந்து யூ ஹவ் கிவன் லாட் ஆஃப் just in a lighter vein, but you know, you are also a leader who spotted opportunities in the stress sector, before all this problems happened. So if in all that stress and the things that are happening, and what are the bright spots you see in the economy, opportunities that you see? There'll be any, as you said before, there'll be some opportunities out of this distress. So what are the things that you're seeing there?
No, I'm just saying that before we started this, we said one man's meat is another man. One man meat is another man's poison, or another man's meat is another man's. So the question is that what will happen is that there are 3 categories of players out there. One is that guys who are sitting on money, cash is king. One set of guys who have got cash, who have got ability, whose leverage is low, who can borrow. So those guys will have enough and more opportunities for those guys to grab in the marketplace, because there are a lot of guys who will be suffering, will be falling down the wayside. They can take it in their
maybe let me put it a little bit more precise. So let's say we will see a lot of job losses, lot of mid-career executives. Let's say if they have to come out of jobs, they have to start something small on their own. What they can look for in this கொஞ்சம் micro level la பேசலாம். Let's not look at macro level.
Okay, let's talk at the micro level. I'm just saying that there are only 2 ways. If companies don't go for profitability and companies go for liquidity, if the company's motto is to protect employees and not profitability, at least 80-90% of the people you can still protect. 70 to 80% of the people you can protect. If you decide to go for profitability, you may have to cut more people. So the first decision making points of every company, whether it is small or big, has to decide between next 12 months, what is my strategy? My strategy is for profitability, or for less profitability, but more of survival. If that decision has to be taken, assuming we take positive decision, we say that government is willing to support almost everyone and everybody, and we have minimum job losses. Let's say it's 10%, 15%. Even notwithstanding that, hello?
Sir, yes, sir, we are hearing you. Yes, sir.
We are hearing you. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes. Some poll came across. I don't know what happened.
I don't know. You can hear me, right? I can see. Okay.
Yeah, I
so
can hear
now,
you.
if the decision making, first, it's like a decision tree analysis. Professor Ramki taught us. First decision tree is that first decision point is that how much of your employee you are going to protect with a profitability. So we decide maximum what I can. That is my first objective, to protect as many employees as I can. If that is your decision tree first point, then you'll have minimum number of exit of employees. Then we'll come to what we have to do with the remaining. Even with that, you'll have a lot of people you have to sack along the way. But if we do that, which is what last 1 hour, you are saying I'm giving all bad news. I'm giving bad news because if you don't tell the right suggestions, at least in forums like this, you will take wrong decision. Banks are sitting with money. Everything is an opportunity. Next 6, 12 months, everything is hunky-dory. Life will become normal. I mean, these are not real. We have to look at realities of life. It is not going to be normal. Let us be sure about it. So the question is that, hello?
Sorry, Venkat. If I may do a current Thapar job, I think what Gilbert was, I mean, I'm trying to play an advocate for Gilbert. I don't know. I think what he's asking about is in terms of opportunities.
I'm coming to that, sir.
Like a job, somebody who is an employee becoming an entrepreneur, he thinks like he's a kind of an opportunity of being a job creator. I think that's the kind of
I'm coming to that. I just maybe I took a little longer time than I should, but I'm just coming to that point. I'm saying if the job losses are minimal, I was only trying to emphasize on the point. Let's assume our job losses compared to what is imminently facing us, 50% we are able to save our employees, 50% of the employees we are not able to save. Now my next question is that there are a lot of self-entrepreneurship now with all this technology which is coming in. I think there will be, I mean, we should also not underestimate the human intelligence. We should not underestimate. We think that everything is come to an end. It doesn't happen that way. In the last 3 weeks, what we couldn't do in last 3 years, we have done it in last 3 weeks. How we cut cost, how we managed to do that. So individual and collective brilliance will take over. Human wisdom, human intelligence will take over and will find its own set of solution, which will come along with technologies and new opportunities, which will come along the way. The second important point, which we also should highlight, which Gilbert, you're saying, I've given you all the bad news. I'll give you one good news, and again, I'll give you, is that now with the post this issue, a lot of companies will move away from China. Now the question is that China, there is there's a concentration of all supply chain which has happened in China for the last 20 years. Now all countries, including South Korea, and all of them are talking about moving out of China. Then a fair share of the business should also come to India. And the question is that how much and how far we are receptive to take advantage of those. Many of them in the next 12 to 18 months, you will also have a lot of new businesses coming into India. If you can be receptive and take advantage of it. You have done one thing you have done right. We have cut taxes. We have brought down for all startups, it's only 15% tax as compared to earlier used to be 30-35%. So that's a very good move the government did about knowingly or unknowingly. About a year back, we came 6 months back, we did that. So 15% tax is a good incentive for companies to come to India. Second important point is that what we need to really fix again is the land and labor. These are two important things which we need to fix. If we get the land and labor right, I think the job losses which we are talking about can be taken care of. That it's a question of chicken and egg, which comes first and which comes second. A lot of industries will move to India. A lot of employment we can get if we get our act right. So it's not that we will lose something. We will lose something, but we'll also get a lot of things which we can get it right. For which again we need to move very fast on land and labor reforms. One small number I'll give you. India imports about $50 to $60 billion imports every year we do for electronic goods. India, that is our own consumption. Indian consumption is about $50 to $60 billion every year. After gold and oil, this is our largest outgo of foreign exchange. Why those companies didn't come to India in the last 5-10 years? Have you ever thought about it? Why it has not happened? It's not that all of them liked only China. It is just because 2-3 things we didn't do right. One is that we didn't have land reforms, we didn't have labor reforms, and ease of doing business and capital and other things. Some of it we have addressed, taxation and all that. The other things we have taken steps. If we do these 2 things right, a lot of startups will happen here, a lot of companies from there will come. So it's a question of how you want to play this game. Next 12 to 18 months is a different game. It's like a new management exercise. The government should think like companies now. So coming back to first protect as many jobs. Whatever jobs left out, there will be mechanism to find out. There'll be new employments will also come. New technologies will create its own set of new employments will happen. It's not wrong. It is wrong to assume that all people will have no educated guy will just go hungry. We will find our own mechanism to do that. We will do that. Did not Swiggy, Gigi, everything came, no?
Yeah, sure, Venkat, I hear you. Yeah, sure.
So we will have our days in sun.
I think we can Nagaraj?
Yes, sir. But there are a lot of questions. We can take one last question, sir. 1 or 2 last questions.
Yeah, it's already
yes, sir. I understand. Yeah. Shankar, sir, Chief Manager from ICC, he wants to have a question. Sir, can we?
Yeah.
Arun, sir? Okay, I think he's not in the line. Okay. Any other professors want to add something, or we can close it? Mani, sir?
No, if it is time for winding up, please permit me to record my appreciation after. I mean, this time I asked Kanakaraj and Shankar to give me that pleasure. Can I, or are there going to be more questions?
No, sir.
Please, Kanakaraj, a minute. So, Venkat, I really appreciate Venkat. Very good. And this is what we wanted actually. And with all the stalwarts and the professors all with us here, and the alumni from different batches, a wonderful exchange of knowledge. So, though the economy and other industries seems to be in a different state of doldrum, but always, as you said, there is also opportunities ahead now. So, but we'll wait for Professor Ramki to sum up. And thank you once again, Venkat. Yeah.
I must say it was an honest and candid assessment, as well as very pragmatic suggestions and a long-term optimistic outlook. I really, enjoyed Venkat's grasp of the whole situation. I did not listen to Geeta Gopinath, who a few days back apparently. I don't know whether she was here and as that's it. Thank you, Venkat. Really.
What more you want, Venkat? Vasishtha Vayala, Brahma Rishi Patang.
Thank you.
This whole system is a wonderful success. Yeah. Thank you all.
Mani sir will submit.
No, only 1 point before we say you. I'm just saying that I come from as I told you, from credit. I come from I started my career as a bull, in the sense that I was always looked only at good side and nothing to look at the darker side. As gray hair started coming in, some realism started coming in. I should also look at the downside, not only look at the upside. Now at the end of my professional career, or heading towards that, I have to look at all sides. I have to see from good, bad, ugly, and then give a very, very balanced view. And in times of crisis like that, there are always people will come and say, we have to prop up the confidence. We have to give a thing, but we also have to be cognizant of realities. And if we don't get those things right in the next, whatever I said, 3 to 6 months, catastrophe could be good. That is why I was a little pessimistic. So please don't construe that it was all about negative outlook. Maybe 2 years from now, we may have a different story to narrate, but we have to do a lot of things right to be there. That's all.
So one small question, sir. Sorry to intervene.
Sir,
Yeah.
we are from Tirupur. Most probably நிறைய பெரிய கம்பெனிஸ் இருக்காங்க. If they are making the invoke perjure, இப்ப நிறைய பேர் அது பண்றாங்க. So if we make that invoke perjure, then இதை நம்பி இருக்கிற small MSMEs and small SMEs இவங்கெல்லாம் வந்து how can they procure after this COVID?
இல்ல என்ன pledge சொன்னீங்க invoking?
சார் இப்போ வந்து அவங்களுடைய ப்ராடக்ட்ஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து இந்த ப்ரெஜூர் பண்றது, அந்த பெரிய MSMEs எல்லாம் வந்து ப்ரெஜூர் பண்ணாங்கன்னா if they invoke then again அவங்களையே நம்பி இருக்க if I like say they are as Manu rightly said tea association அவங்க இப்ப அதுக்கு தான் பிளான் பண்றாங்க. ரெண்டு ஆப்ஷன். ஒன்னு they are இந்த ரீஸ்ட்ரக்சர் ஃபார்மேட் பண்ணிடுவாங்களா சார், அதாவது அவங்களை காப்பாத்திக்காக ரீஸ்ட்ரக்சர் பண்ணுவாங்க. அதுக்கு பதிலா இப்ப இன்வோக் பண்ண ஆரம்பிக்கிறாங்க ப்ரெஜூரை. இந்த மாதிரி பண்ணிட்டா தென் அவங்களே நம்பி இருக்கிற சபார்டினேட்ஸ் MSME SMEs இவங்கெல்லாம் வந்து how can they procure after this COVID? அதான்
நீங்க பேசிக்கலி சொல்றது வந்து ஃபோர்ஸ் மேஜர் கிளாஸ் இன்வோக்
ஆமா சார், ஃபோர்ஸ் ப்ரெஜூர் பண்ணிட்டாங்க.
No, but the court has to take a call, sir. Everybody then can invoke force major. எல்லாருமே force major invoke பண்ணிடலாம். Yeah. I mean, everybody
is planning for the same.
No, but courts will come in and they will step in, sir, because it cannot happen across.
Sir. Then it will be problem for everyone, right?
No, they cannot do that. Everybody does that. Then everybody is a force major. Then nobody has to pay for anybody. Yes, Mani.
Mani, you going to sum up, Mani?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah, please. Go ahead.
Now, sir, it's an honor. So we've actually managed to get your 2 decades of experience in the last 1 hour and 50 odd minutes. We've got it in a platter. Now, I know how much you would have struggled in the last 20 years to build up this experience, but then you have given it to us in a platter, taking us all the way to the genesis of why the BIFR came in, and summing up with how IBC has changed from reviving companies to actually tearing them out and ensuring that the money is saved or the banks profit out of the money that they lend. So the entire journey of the last 22 years that you've been working, you have given it to us in a platter. Interesting anecdotes being quoted, extremely candid answers. And as you rightly said, everything that you said is taken as positive and pieces of advice. I'm sure everybody who listened to this will take home quite a lot to ponder over, and we will try our best to not make the mistakes. We'll try and wait for our investment decisions. We'll try and ensure that the liquidity of our companies improvise as much as we can, and we'll put capex expenditure on hold at least for the next 12 to 18 months. Pleasure. Thanks for taking time off amidst your tight schedule. I think there's nothing more than telling you that we are honored that we come from the same legacy of BSMED. Thank you. Thanks a lot once again.
Thank you very much. Thanks.